Hello out there. Welcome. It is now 12 o'clock noon in Toronto, 9 in the morning where Sue Johnson is in Victoria, and you are in many places in the world. I know that. So thank you very much for joining us for this virtual lunch. It's going to be a different kind of virtual lunch than we've ever had before. So I'll tell you that right off. Sue and I are going to chat for a while. We'll open it up for questions and, of course, your participation by asking questions is always welcome. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as well. Before I talk about the details of today, I want to tell you about what's coming up for us because we've kind of taken a hiatus in the summer and we have a very, very full schedule the next few months. And I'd like to let you know a little bit about what's coming up. Number one, we have Bruce Ecker doing something different, an on-demand program you can access anytime with a Q&A for people who join us. And it's on transformational change through memory reconsolidation. You might know Bruce Ecker's work. He's looked at a lot of different therapies, trying to understand what therapies do to the brain and why they're effective. And he's a very interesting guy. He's presenting that starting September 14th. That will be available. Then we have a few Sue Johnson related programs that Sue doesn't even know about yet. For example, Sue did a program with Suzanne Isenza, and Suzanne is a sex therapist who will be presenting on integrating sex therapy, couples therapy. That will be September 24th. Then on October 4th, a group of EFT practitioners from around the world formed to look at how they can affect the way we work with different cultures, races, ethnicities, all that kind of stuff in a sensitive way. So 9 EFT therapists who now call themselves the Just Us Group will present on that topic. And it includes really therapists from around the world who are participants, including George Fowler, who you may know, our own Toronto's own Sharon Ramsey, therapists from across the States and Uganda are presenting a very interesting way, even if you're not an EFT therapist, to work with people and differences. Sue will be back with us for her 2-day webinar, 3-hour session webinar on emotionally focused therapy for individuals. And that will be in November. She's presenting that with Leanne Campbell, who's also from Vancouver Island, where Sue is. We have a lot more plans, including webinars with Gabor Mate, Richard Schwartz, Bessel van der Kolk, all kinds of other people as well. So we'll send you, with a link to this video, information about that stuff, plus a discount coupon for all our webinars, because we're just starting the year off. And the other thing we're doing is we are having 4 weeks of 5-day programs in Cancun at a beautiful 5-star resort in February. Some of our presenters include Bessel van der Kolk, Diana Fosha, Janina Fisher, Frank Anderson, and others presenting each morning with lots of other interesting things we plan on doing. With all the uncertainty about traveling, we're offering a free cancellation policy for these workshops. It's going to be quite a few weeks, and we'll send you that information as possible. Emily, who you may see in our screen, is our hostess with the mostest, and she's there for you. If you have any problems, go to the chat line. When it comes to our question period, if you'd like to ask Sue a question, go to the chat line at that time as well. Also, everything we do is recorded, so you will get a copy of this video within the next day if you'd like to watch any of it again or share it or anything else. Okay. So an introduction to Sue, and then off we'll go with a different kind of conversation. So many of you know that Sue Johnson is a leading innovator in the fields of couple therapy and adult attachment. She's the primary developer of emotionally focused couples and family therapy, which is now just known as EFT. It's demonstrated its effectiveness for over 30 years of peer-reviewed clinical research. She's received numerous awards in recognition of this development from the American Psychological Association, and even she has an Order of Canada, which is very special here in Canada. Her best-selling book, Hold Me Tight, has sold more than 1 million copies. and it's taught countless couples of how to enhance and repair their love relationships. I know many couples therapists use it in conjunction with their couples therapy. Her most recent book is called Attachment Therapy and Theory in Practice, which delineates the promise of attachment science for understanding and repairing relationships and working with individuals and families as well. She's the founding director of the International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Therapy, and she trains counselors all around the world, and there are 80 affiliated centers. EFT has been an amazing phenomenon and really changed the work of couples therapy. Sue's been associated with us at Leading Edge for more than 20 years. We've been at many of her workshops where, I've just seen the reaction of the audience and the feedback we get, and now with some of the webinars Sue has presented, and it's always a great experience to work with Sue. Now, when I sent out a message about this program is about, I thought we'd be focusing mainly on the transition that Sue made from really focusing on teaching EFT to couples for her work with EFT for individuals, her latest book. We were going to do all the normal virtual lunch together stuff that we do with many speakers. We usually talk about backgrounds, how they got into the work, their influences, their current reality with therapy. That's kind of our standard format. We open up for questions. It's been great. But I contacted Sue yesterday because I know this has been a very difficult year personally for Sue. We spoke earlier in the year because Sue joined a club that I wish she hadn't have joined, and one I joined over 20 years ago as someone who has cancer in the eye. I went through a lot, came through it fairly well. And it's been a challenging year. And I asked Sue, can we talk about that? So Sue wrote back yesterday, sure, anything is okay. So we're going to talk about Sue's experiences, where life is right now, and then open it up for questions. So welcome, Sue. It's so good of you to take this time and have this conversation.
Hey, Michael, it's always lovely to talk to you.
So do you want to take us through this year? I don't know what people know about what you've been through, but I think I'd like to focus on what this experience has been like and what you've learned in terms of yourself, and also what you've learned and how it applies to your work and how you think about therapy. So do you want to take us through a bit?
Sure. I thought we were going to sort of do it on the side. But you've launched me into it, so whatever.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think for everyone, the last year and a half has been filled with uncertainty and anxiety and angst. And I think that's a global thing. It's kind of like, I think it's shaken us all up with COVID, with all the separation, which from my point of view as an attachment orientated therapist, what I talk about is that emotional isolation is in and of itself traumatizing. So we've been dealing with a pandemic, all this uncertainty, and then for many of us, much more isolation and much less social connection than we're used to. So that's been incredibly hard. And then I think we've all woken up a lot in North America, hopefully all over the world, to how so many of us have felt discriminated against and marginalized, and that we sort of knew that, but we didn't know that. And so that was a huge thing that happened. And for me, it was all mixed in with sort of the way the world turns, which is you have a little distortion in your eye and you go to your eye doctor and you assume that it's no big deal. And suddenly it turns into a very big deal. But in my case, I was told you can have this therapy, which we both had, Michael, where they put a little thing on the top of your eye and they radiate your eye and they tell you everything's going to be fine. That's pretty scary in itself. And I think it happened to you a long time ago, but it's pretty scary. But for me, It all went wrong, and last April, which is some months ago now, I was told, okay, we don't like this. Next Thursday, you're going to have your left eye out. And for me, that was traumatizing. And, you know, we work with trauma. I've always worked with individuals going through trauma all through, even though I'm well known as a couples therapist. I've always worked with individuals going through trauma. And I think for me, it's both personally, but also professionally, it's been quite a journey, because it's one thing to sit and work with people. And in EFT, we work pretty deeply with people. It's one thing to feel that, you know, this place called helplessness and fear, because you go with your clients. In EFT, you move into people's trauma with them, and you walk with them through it out the other side. So, but for me, this was a different experience. And I feel like, well, I actually wrote one social media post, which my colleague who does my social media suggested to me. And first of all, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I somehow felt that I should do that, because as therapists, I think we're all in the business of, in the end, people come to us with the problem called being human, and with all its fears and limitations and stuck places. And I thought, well, I teach therapists and I do therapy, and what does it mean if I go into that place, and shouldn't I talk about it at least a little? And isn't that what we're all supposed to do? We're all supposed to share and grow each other and help each other. So I did. I put a social media out, and basically said, helplessness is a human experience, and and in the end, no matter how many books we've read and how much meditation we think we've done, or how many insights we think we've had, it's an overwhelming experience. And there are not many ways to deal with it. What was interesting for me was that the ways I found to deal with it sort of dovetailed perfectly into all my clinical experience and all the books and things we've written in EFT and in attachment, dovetailed perfectly, because what I found is what we know from attachment science, and we know it in our own hearts as well. What I found is that you cannot go through that experience alone. And I am blessed with a loving family. I am blessed with an amazing partner. I am, and we're both very strong people, so we can, we're very different and we can disagree, and, but he's amazing. I am blessed with fantastic colleagues, like my wonderful colleague, Leanne Campbell, who works with me now so much. And what also moved me incredibly, which I did not expect at all, was that when people found out about this, I could not believe the support I felt. I couldn't believe it. Michael, you were amazingly supportive, but I got things like, people sent me a 40-minute video from therapists in Egypt who were all praying for me. People had a prayer hour where all these therapists all over the world prayed for me. And these people in Egypt said, "Where were you when we were praying for you?" And I said, "Well, if you really want to know, I was on a ferry." I was on a little ferry going through these beautiful islands near where I live, to a little island called Saturna, which is my new little escape in the world, which is the most beautiful little place you've ever seen in your life. And I was on a ferry, and I was thinking of you all, and I was looking at the water, the light on the water, and thinking how bizarre and wonderful it is that people were thinking of me and praying for me. And they were all obsessed with whether I was facing in the direction of Mecca. And I thought, I'm probably not. And then I told them, and apparently I was facing in the direction of Mecca. And they were all totally delighted by this. But the thing was, it was very humbling and moving and amazing and incredible. So that amazed me and blew me away. So I learned that we need people, and I learned that we are helpless when we're alone, and that's just who we are. And I knew that already, but I didn't, if you see what I mean. But I think I also learned what I hope we do in EFT, which, as I learned, that the only way out is through. That the escape, you can do it sometimes. My great escape in the world was to dance tango. Well, you can't dance tango in a pandemic, so that was cut off. My escape is to walk with my dogs on the beach. I have a young dog who is so full of joy that you can't not be joyful around her, because she just leaps in the air and, she runs. And so my escape is nature, to walk in the woods, to walk on the beach, to watch a video of someone doing therapy, because that always fascinates me, always, always. The idea that we can turn our pain into growth has fascinated me since I was about 4 years old, standing on a stool in an English pub, which my parents, that's where I grew up, in a pub, watching adults, watching the expressions on people's faces as they fought, cried, talked, joked. There's something about, I knew on some level that there was all kinds of emotion going on, and that sometimes, often when people were there with each other, it turned into something else. It turned into connection, or it turned into, obviously I couldn't verbalize these things, but it turned into people hugging each other, and people laughing, and people looking better. And so the whole idea of pain turning into growth has always fascinated me, and it still fascinates me. And I still fantasize about writing the definitive book on how we grow in therapy, which will never be written, but I fantasize about that. Instead, I'm writing little parables for my granddaughter about a crow and a fox. I can say things in there. But in my case, I think I've learned a lot about allowing yourself to feel that helplessness, allowing yourself to feel that terror about you don't know what's going to happen, and somehow finding that you still breathe, and that you still feel joy when someone you love holds you, and the morning is still beautiful, and the light on the water still brings you joy, and finding a way to live with that uncertainty and accept it. And if you look at spiritual texts, I have wonderful colleagues. I'm not a traditional, I'm not a Christian, I'm not anything. If I'm anything, I'm a kind of a very bad Buddhist, but people would send me tracts from different leaders and things. And it seems to me that this is what much of religion is about. This is what beauty is about in art. It's showing us our humanness, our vulnerability, and how we only have a few ways to deal with it. But sometimes we find we can deal with it. We deal with it together, and as we deal with it, we somehow expand. You know, we're obsessed with EFIT right now, with emotionally focused individual therapy, because we've always done it, and we've never really sort of expounded on it or really explicated it before. And now that's what we're doing in the EFT world. And I'm just so turned on by it. I'm just so excited by it, you know, but it's this, I found myself doing the same thing that we do in therapy, to let myself feel the emotion, and gradually I start to be able to order it. And gradually I start to be able to make sense of it and breathe through it. And then I find there's something else on the other side. There's acceptance, or even a gratefulness. Somehow in all this fear, I have found myself recognizing how absolutely amazing my life has been. You know, I'm basically a little English working class, rather stroppy. That's an English word for bad-tempered and sort of a bit aggressive, okay, rather stroppy little kid who really just had a few things happen to her that made her life so rich. One of them was that she ended up in this upper class private Catholic school. She wasn't upper class, she wasn't Catholic. She was, talk about an outsider. She so wasn't what people expected there. She spoke wrong, she looked wrong, her clothes didn't fit. She was stroppy instead of nice. She didn't know the catechism. No, she didn't. She didn't believe that the Pope was infallible. That was a big issue when I was an adolescent, because the nuns were most distressed by the fact that I kept saying, the Pope's a fat little dude, he's not infallible. You know, so I got an incredible education, and then I came to Canada, and then I followed my obsession with emotion and growth and relationships into psychology. And I became aware in all this of how amazing I've been able to come from this tiny little street. If you saw it, it's a mean little street. There's no tree anywhere. It's a load of ugly little row houses with a little pub on it. And English working class life was pretty narrow. And when I think that I've come from there, all the places I've been, the amazing people I've met, I was just aware of how much I've been given. So, you know, it's kind of interesting when I talk about this. Sometimes when I think about it, I say to myself, oh, Sue, will you, you're just caught in cliches, but I don't think that's true. I think what it is that as human beings, in the end, we're all the same. And there are patterns in how we experience life and how we perceive and how we feel. And so when we go into what I guess religious people would call the dark night of the soul, we do find the same things there, and there are only so many ways through, and sometimes those ways through are in therapy, sometimes they're in psychology texts, sometimes they're in religious tracts, sometimes they're in great teachers, you know. So I don't know what I think, Michael. That's a bloody big question, Michael, that you I didn't expect you to do that, okay. I learned a lot from it. And in some ways it's amazing how you adapt, you do. You know, what fascinates me is I'm doing this at 9 in the morning. My experience is that until about 10:30, my brain is saying, there's something wrong, where's your other eye? And my emotional state is not that great. And then sometimes, somewhere around 11 o'clock, my brain says, oh, this is the way it is. Oh, all right then. And somehow something shifts, so it's fascinating how adaptive we are. The first time I went kayaking in my new little cottage on this beautiful island, I got mad because kayaking with one eye isn't the same as kayaking with two eyes. It just isn't. You can't. My distance vision isn't very good, and I misjudge. I misjudge distance. Right. I think I'm putting my paddle in the water and I miss it, and I got mad and stomped off into my little cottage. But the second time, I somehow I was out there and all these I was going through this school of little fish, and this otter was running along the side of the rocks, and there's an eagle sitting on this branch above me, and I forgot all about how mad I was and how I only got one eye, and I started to be grateful that I've got one eye to see all the beauty that is there. So it's been quite a journey, and it makes you realize how much you take for granted. Our eyes, the fact that there are people who can't hear. I can't imagine that, right? The fact that we can see, the fact that we can reach out and touch others and feel their hand, that kind of thing. We take so much for granted. So I don't know. That's sort of what I have to say. I'm not sure I have more to say than that. I think everything I do feeds into my therapy and the way I understand human beings, and feeds into me and my life. We talk about expanding the self in EFIT. I don't know whether that's the ultimate way to capture it, but that's the word expansion, growth. So much of the therapy we focused on in psychotherapy in the last few years has been giving people tips and giving people little coping mechanisms and giving people sort of skating along the surface. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what some people want. But if that's what we're really going to do in psychotherapy, I think we're done. I think psychotherapy will die, and apps and little computer programs will take over, because people want more depth than that. So for me, all the experiences I have in my life go into my therapy, and I learn from my clients, I learn from my colleagues. It's all kind of one, right? And I've all through this, I didn't keep doing therapy except with one person all through this experience. I was working with one lady who's probably one of the most severely traumatized clients I've ever worked with. And I could not, in all conscience, stop with her. So I told her what was happening to me, and I told her, listen, I'll do what I can. There's going to be weeks when I'm not going to be able to be with you on Zoom, but I will. If you send me an email, I'll respond. But I actually, apart from a few weeks, which really weren't possible, I worked with her all the way through this. And that was also, it was a gift to me. It was a gift to her. It was fascinating. So for me, everything flows. That I love therapy because I learn more about who we are as human beings. I learn about me. I'm honored to be with people as they grow. I'm honored to go to those dark places with them and find that there's light in them and that they can grow. This particular woman, I just found her totally inspiring. I'm not sure I could have survived what she dealt with. She's in the EFIT. Oh, the EFIT book is coming out on the 29th of the month. The primer in EFIT. Yeah, we haven't mentioned that, but she's in that book, and I've called her Henny. I don't think I could have survived what she went through as a child. I don't think I could. And you know, so I sort of inspired her. She inspired me. And at the end, after one very powerful session, I was very concerned for her, and I said, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And she said, "Yes, it's okay, Sue, because now I have me, you see. I have me. The darkness is still there, but I have me in the darkness." And I was just blown away by that. So through all this stuff I've been through, and my colleagues have been through too in EFT, I'm still here. I'm still fascinated by growth and change in human beings, and how we deal with how hard it is to be a human being in so many ways. You know, and I find I still like teaching, but I've become, having worked with couples and taught with couples for 35 years, this is going to sound terribly arrogant, but I'm going to say it anyway, whatever. I feel like I know couples now. I feel like if you stand me up in front of almost any couple in the world, I can damn well help them. So I feel like I kind of know couples now. So I really am into working with individuals and fascinated about how people grow. And of course, in the process, I have to grow too. I still have to go and have regular MRIs, which I don't know if you had those, Michael, but they're not fun. And what isn't fun, actually, it's not the MRI that isn't fun, it's the waiting for the results that isn't fun. That's so that's ongoing. And the fact of the matter is, in those moments, uncertainty hits. But the bottom line is, we all live with uncertainty all the time, because that's what human life is about. And it's about whether you can stand and be fully alive. I think therapy is about helping people be fully alive, not just cope. Whether you can stand and expand your humanness and find your humanness and be fully alive as you stand on the edge of a cliff. I mean, that is what human beings do. So in moments, in years like this, that's, you know, that we all have to do it. And that's what I've had to do. And I'm no different than anyone else. So I think that's enough. I mean, maybe you want to ask me a question. I'm never going to say, yes, okay, sure, we can talk about anything again when you ask me.
Well, listen, I really, really appreciate this. And I would imagine that people watching this will feel the same way. And I had a bunch of questions, which I'm not going to bother with. And I will open it up momentarily to anyone who would like to connect with Sue on the screen, or if you'd like to have Emily ask a question, go to the chat box, because I'd like you to open this up to everyone, Sue, because it's hard to know what to follow up, because there's so much you've said. And so I'll just ask a simple question to you before you open it up further, because you're still in a process. Didn't happen long ago. The book is coming out. You think it will have changed the way you work with people, or how will it change your practice with individuals? Is there anything in that book that's coming out that you might want to alter, or insights you had from this, you know, incredible experience that you've had and are still going through, that might change the way you work with people?
I think it's just deepened my work with people, Michael. I think it's just given me a new appreciation for fear, the nature of fear and how overwhelming it can be. I don't think this is, you have to remember, I wrote this book while this was all happening. Okay, which somebody said to me the other day, how could you do that? And I thought, that's right, how could I possibly do that? And to be honest, I don't know how I did that, but I did. Well, I do know how I did it. I had a wonderful, wonderful colleague, Leanne Campbell. She's on this call. So she, years and years ago, she used to be my student, and now she's my wonderful, wonderful colleague. So I did it with her. But so I wrote the book as this was going down, but not after I lost my eye. I mean, that the book was more or less finished before that final thing. But I think I just know more clearly, and I'm more confident that I can take people into their pain and out the other side. That if people are not alone, and if you help them order their experience, they can tolerate that experience and grow through it. I think I have more faith in that, having had to do that in the last year on a different level. So I think I have more faith in what we do. I have more faith in the power of letting yourself feel the emotion and having it flow through you, and that it takes you somewhere. Emotion takes you somewhere. Ventilation of emotion, or just coping with it. Sometimes coping with it's okay, but sometimes you're so busy coping with it, it just gets you stuck again. So, but emotion always takes you somewhere, and some of the places some of those places are good, and so I don't think it's changed the way I intervene. I think it's deepened my awareness and given me more faith in what we do, which was pretty strong to begin with, to tell you the truth. I mean, I really believe in what we do.
You know what? Since I put you on the spot, Sue, and I'm sorry if I wasn't more clear, I want to put Leanne on the spot. Leanne's on the screen. And I wonder if you have any comments just in this conversation in any way. I know Sue asked you to co-present her webinar, and you've gotten to know Sue on the island. So, Leanne, what do you have to say about this? What have you learned and what have you seen?
Well, I can barely speak because it was so beautiful all that you said, Sue. Well, I've been a great admirer of Sue Johnson forever, and I think witnessing this last year just gives me more respect. And I love what you say, Sue, about how if we walk with people, they grow. And I share the passion that Sue has about EFIT and about growing this aspect of the model. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to be a part of all of this. And sorry that I'm so emotional. But yes, beautiful, Sue, as always. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open it up. We have a lot of therapists watching this who know Sue or have been influenced by Sue. So I'd like to open it for comments, questions, anything that you would like. So Emily, where are we?
Yeah, Betty has a question, and I see Greg's hands up. So Betty, do you want to ask a question, and then Greg?
I just had a question. You mentioned walking through the trauma with this one patient who was hard, was not possible. You didn't feel comfortable just letting go. And I'm in a situation where I may face that at some point here, and I'm just wondering how you did go through that time where you weren't able to put 100% towards your therapy role, but had to move into your own personal role. And how did you balance that? How did you do that? I would love to hear about that.
Basically, I was, part of being with Rogers, part of Rogerian therapy. And I think this is a challenge for us as therapists. I'm never quite sure exactly how this goes, but in a therapy like EFT, you are there as a person, not just as a professional. And Rogers talks about showing up as a person and being transparent. And at the same time, of course, we're not just people. We are professionals, and we have to be disciplined, and we're there for our clients. We're not just turning up as people. So how do you deal with that? And to be honest, I think that's one of the hugest questions in psychotherapy right now, because certainly in psychology in Canada, from my point of view, we've become so professional that many of us have just disappeared, that we're a professional role, and we show up as a formula and as a professional role and as a therapy model. We don't show up as Betty or Sue or Leanne. But I don't know about you, but I don't trust people I can't see. And that's the truth. And I don't trust doctors I can't see. I don't trust, I trusted my surgeon because I could see her as a person as well as a surgeon. Okay. There's a couple of doctors I've met since. I don't trust them. And boy, did they get mad when I said I wanted a second opinion, because I'm not supposed to ask that. But I couldn't say, I don't trust you. You keep telling me I'm over 60, therefore you don't see me as a person at all. Buzz off. I'm not over 60. I'm Sue. My name isn't over 60. My name's called Sue. And showing up as, so I think you're hitting on something incredibly important, Betty. And it was a challenge for me. And so what I decided to do was to be as transparent as I could and still be professional. I said, I think part of me thinks, I included her in the decision-making. I said, part of me thinks, Henny, that I should talk about this case with a colleague and let my wonderful colleague take over, because I can't be here for you every week. And I'm not sure what will be possible in the next few months. And we talked about it. And she said, I want to stay with you. And I said, well, okay, then there's going to be weeks when I can't see you, and there's going to be times when I won't be able to be as engaged as I would like to be. Do you understand? I think there was actually only one session where I said to her, I don't think I can keep doing this. After about 40 minutes, I said, I think we're going to have to stop. And she said, that's okay. Right. So I was transparent with her. I did that. But the bottom line is, she's a 50-year-old woman who's gone through massive trauma, and she's at a key point in she's entering stage 2 of EFIT. What am I going to do? And she's clearly telling me that we've reached a level of trust. What am I going to do? So I said, I'll do what I can. Right. Actually, Betty, she said something very interesting to me. I said something like, well, my other colleague is a very good therapist. She's very, very good. She would be great for you. And we talked about the connection between us. And she said something very interesting. She said, I've been in therapy before, but you're the only therapist I've been with who isn't afraid of my pain. Mm. And she said, you're not afraid of my pain, are you? I thought about that. This is a very interesting client. I thought about that, and I said, no. And then afterwards I went away and I thought, well, why aren't I afraid of her pain? And to be honest, I still struggle with that. But I think the answer is, from all our work and all our studies, and I had faith that I could walk through it with her and that she would be different at the end of it. So I wasn't afraid. But she, to be honest, she, well, on the TSI, which is a scale by, who's it by? I've forgotten his name now. Briere, looking at trauma. This woman was off the scale on everything, okay? And so, you know, if you just looked at her from a diagnostic point of view, you would have doubts as to whether 40 sessions of therapy were going to make any difference. You really would. But when I looked at her as a person, we found her strengths and we together, and, you know, I believed that she would grow, and that, so I couldn't not do it. I couldn't not do it. And I did it by being very open and honest and saying, you know, maybe you shouldn't do this with me, you know, but I'll do what I can. And in the end, I was very, very glad that I did hang in with her, because we did pull it off. We did. And you'll see in the book, you know, I put transcripts in the book, and I don't edit those transcripts. I mean, you know, which is also interesting to me. People have said to me, oh, you must edit the hell out of the transcripts of therapy. I don't actually, because I'm quite lazy when it comes to that, to tell you the truth. I mean, unless somebody goes off on a tangent and talks for 20 minutes, you know, I just take that bit out, but basically I don't edit them. So you can look at her process. But she was an amazing client. And she went from not being able to tell me a story at all in a coherent way in the first session to going on a wilderness trip by herself for 6 days in a canoe. I'd have died on that trip. Okay, I couldn't have made it for a minute. So she made it through. So I was glad I hung in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg.
Okay, thank you. Sue and Leanne, thank you for sharing your friendship and your professional connection with each other. And what impresses me so deeply is that both of you have incredible resilience. I've trained under both of you. That's the whole thing. And Sue, what I appreciate in your journey is that you've been compassionate before. It's part of who you are, but you've grown even more deeply in compassion. And that just impresses me so deeply. And it's the whole thing of loss. 14 years ago, I lost my wife very suddenly, 60 seconds, that was it. Mm-hmm. And so I had to deal with that loss. I went on a Jesuit retreat for 8 days. And of course, the retreat director, Mary Mason, said, well, where's God? Well, not very close. But amazingly, after 8 days, I didn't feel alone.
Yes.
That's the whole thing that impresses me in your story, this sense of helplessness, but you need not to feel alone. And you had this wonderful support, the prayerful support of Muslims halfway across the world.
Yes.
You know, it's just amazing. There's love there. And without love, we are empty. So and the amazing thing in the story of my retreat, Mary Mason, I discovered, was dying of cancer. And yet she was beside me in my journey to move out from this place of helplessness. So I just wanted to share that, but to really, as the outsider looking at you and Leanne and your friendship, God bless you for the connections that you have and growing in compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That was a lovely thing to say.
Welcome.
You know, that's an interesting comment you're making about spirituality, because one of my colleagues, Kenny, works down in Nashville, and I wrote Created Connection. We took Hold Me Tight and we turned it into a version for more traditional Christians called Created for Connection. Lots of people felt I shouldn't do that somehow, but I'm glad I did. And he wrote to me all the way through this. And it's very interesting the way people see it. Like, to give you an example, Kenny would say to me, it's okay, Sue, God is with you. And I would say things like, well, how do you know when he shows up? Kenny, what does he look like? You know? And so Kenny says, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this. Kenny says, oh, well, he talks to me in the morning, you know, and this is, and I said, excuse me, you hear the voice of God, you know, like you're a prophet now. And he says, no, but I know it's a voice from somewhere else that doesn't feel like me. And it's talking to me specifically. And I said, oh, that, right. So you call that the voice of God? He said, yes. He said, well, does that happen to you? I say, yes. He said, but you don't call it the voice of God. I say, no, I don't know what to call it. I call it, I don't know what to call it. You know, it just, sometimes there's something that seems to speak to me early in the morning when I'm very quiet and very silent. And it always says something amazing. And he said, well, that's the voice of God, Sue. I said, all right, okay. So then it hit me that we all have these experiences and we call them by different names. And we don't know what to call them. And we, you know, and there's an anthropologist from Harvard, I can't remember her name now, began with E. She wrote this amazing book called People Who Talk to God. And she's talking about this phenomena, right? Which is, you know, but my experience was simply that I would wake up in the morning and there would be something bigger and other, and it would somehow say something to me that helped amazingly. And so Kenny calls that God. I might call that my inner self. I might call it, actually, I call it the goddess, which drives Kenny crazy. But so, because I think that if you're going to have God, then for goodness sake, God is female. I mean, that's just obvious to me. I mean, like, but of course, God is, you know, we're like ants, you know, and whatever God is the way an ant would see the world, right? We can't really experience God, but it's an interesting one, Greg. So yes, I can relate to what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Our next question is from Kate. Hi, Kate. Oh,
Hi, and hello, Sue. So I've been so looking forward to this this lunchtime and to hearing you speak and answer questions. I've recently graduated from a master's program in spiritual care and psychotherapy. So this spiritual conversation has actually been quite interesting to me. And what do people call spirit or God or intuition? And this was obviously not, I'm not a young student. I was a mature student. So it was a midlife change for me to go into psychotherapy. And I went through what kind of a therapist do I want to be? What modality? And not wanting to put it into a box like this is the modality and I can never stray. On the other hand, thinking, I only have so much time, I should pick something. I figured who I am. And when I did the course on emotional focus therapy for couples, it was like, this is so right for me. This feels so right. This makes so much sense. This is so intuitively sensible to me. But then thinking, what if I don't want to work with couples? I don't know. So all of that is a long preamble to say, I was super excited to see that you're doing a lot more work in broadening the options for working with individuals. I still think that I do want to work with couples, but not exclusively, and maybe not at all. Maybe I won't like it, I don't know. So I'd love to hear more about the journey broadening and the inspiration and why, like even so, which I didn't know about, but even through a tremendous illness, still doing this on this book and bringing this work to therapists so they can use it in practice. So I'd love to hear more about how, and then maybe what the future state of EFT, because I am taking the core skills starting next month. So I'm starting that journey and I'd love to get maybe an idea of what it's going to look like when I get to the next stage of that.
Well, I think, you know, in the book, in the ATIP book that came out, Attachment Theory in practice. What I say is that we're attachment orientated experiential therapists, and we're into growth and change, not just coping, and that you can apply this attachment orientated experiential therapy to whoever's in the room, to individuals, couples, or families. And that's what I say in that book. But in the EFIT primer, what we've tried to do is just really go into the individual modality. You know, the thing about the individual modality, there's lots of things that are slightly different, but we're still using the same interventions and the same perspective. We see people in the same way, right? The difference is that you are dealing with what Irvin Yalom says, the cast of characters inside people's minds, rather than the other person sitting in the other chair. So we all know that one. I mean, we all got a cast of characters inside our head. When I got the ATIP book, I felt in the mail, it was in my hands. I mean, that was my big theoretical work for me, okay? It took me about 7 years to even approach that book. When I got that book, I held it in my hands. For the first 20 seconds, I felt really good. The next 2 minutes, I felt really good. And then on about minute 4, my brain said, well, really, what's the big fuss about? Who's going to care about this book? I mean, only about 5 people are going to read it. It's not going to make any difference. Doesn't really matter. Psychotherapy is not going to change the world. You're out of your mind. This doesn't really matter. Who is that? It's my mother. It's my mother. And that's her. That was her thing. I don't know why, but she was dedicated to me not feeling good about me. I don't know what that was all about, but she was dedicated to it. So then I know it's my mother. And I say, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's my mother, you know? And so in EFIT, we're dealing with the internalization of attachment figures. We're dealing with the core messages that you got when you were growing up, or even that you might be getting from attachment figures in your life, and that you've taken on and you've started to use to order your experience. And so, you know, we're dealing with that. And so in EFIT, you don't have the other partner to create this incredible safe place and bonding experience. The therapist does that with you, but you go in and you meet the child part of you that feels helpless, and you comfort that child, and that changes everything. The adult part of self comforts the child. You go in and you meet the part of you that gives up all the time. You go in and you find out what that voice was all about. There's a woman in the Fern in the ATIP book that I work with. And, you know, she's got this shaming voice. And she associates it with her father, who she could never please. And then towards the end of therapy, she realizes that at this point in her life, it was her older sister who took over that the father's shaming role in the family. And actually in her present life, it is her older sister who tells her, you're a bad person, you're a sinner, very religious family, you're a sinner, you did this, you offended God with what you did with your life, you don't deserve love. And it is this older sister's voice she hears, and she grieves, you know, she weeps, she grieves, she goes through the sadness, and then she's able to find herself and reply to her older sister, you know, you don't define me, you don't tell me who I am, right? So it's a different kind of interpersonal encounter, but going into people's emotions is the same in EFIT or in couples. It's in some ways it's easier in EFIT because you don't have the other person interrupting all the time. You know, you don't have, when you're assembling somebody's emotion, you don't have the other part of the couple saying, excuse me, what about me? You know, no, he doesn't feel that way. You know, you could just go in and work with the emotion. But the interpersonal drama piece, where we all define ourselves in interpersonal dramas with other people, That's just what we do. We're social bonding animals. And we do that inside our own heads all the time. We do that in our lives all the time. We have conversations with these significant others all the time. You know, I think very religious people have conversations with God, right? And they can be an incredible source of strength. Or not. You can have a blaming, judgmental God who you know, which is one of the issues. I grew up with Catholic nuns, you know, and I think their version of God was pretty heavy dude. You know, he was pretty judgmental father, right? He was the guy who would put you in purgatory, right? I was always told that I was probably going to go to purgatory because about the things I said about the Pope. So, you know, maybe that's true. I don't know. But so in EFIT, we're working with these internalized attachment figures, but the process is still the same. If you can do EFT for couples with two people in the room fighting each other, you can do EFIT with one person going into their emotional realities and walking through them and finding this stronger, more secure adult self that can comfort I mean, one of the things that Leanne have found and I have found that is still enthralling to me. I mean, I knew it, but we're doing this EFIT study. So we're looking at all these tapes. We're listening to all these therapists. That's what we always do. We write a manual and then we do a study and we look at all these tapes and again and again and again, one of the most powerful, organic, naturally occurring things that are happening in those sessions is that people go into their most vulnerable self. And because we've built this all the way along in therapy, we go in and hold that vulnerable self. And then we prime the adult, more capable self, the one that's sought out therapy, the one that does have strengths. And that more capable self goes in and holds that vulnerable part of self. We help them do that. So Henny, when she remembers being raped by her father, which she didn't even remember at the beginning of therapy. And this time she not only remembers it, she sees it, she feels it, she's in it. What does she do at the end of that session? The adult part of Henny, who has survived all these things in her life, goes in and sits next to that little girl who's lying on the floor. And she sits next to her and she touches her and she speaks to her and she says, I'm here. You're going to survive. I'm here, right? We're going to escape. We're going to get out. I'm here. And that's what she means by I've got me. And this happens again and again. I didn't decide this, okay? When I didn't make this up in my head when I decided to write a book on EFIT and do this study. I knew the process. I knew what to do. This process emerged organically from all these clients. Some clients do different things. They do many things, but this has emerged. Leanne and I have talked about it 1,000 times. This is emerging as a natural, organic core process. This is where people go. So I have people say to me, Sue, why don't you do what other experiential therapists do and have a conversation with the critical part of self and the vulnerable part of self in EFIT? We do ever so occasionally, but basically because that's not where people go. An attachment theorist isn't making up the growth process or creating a new technological growth process. An attachment theorist is plugging in to the natural organic growth process. The developmental attachment is a developmental theory. We're plugging into the developmental way that people naturally grow. So this is what our clients have been doing. So we're getting better and better and better at making that happen, at priming it. Now we know, now we know. I mean, it's like, but you have to be careful because people's process is their own. So with Henny, for example, I kept thinking, oh, in a minute, she's going to go into incredible anger at her mother, because I felt incredible anger at her mother. Okay. Like, where the hell was her mother? Right. But she never did. What did she do? She went into deep grief that she was all alone and that her mother was so spaced out, so denying the reality, right? That she never had a mother. And even as a child, she understood that her mother wasn't there, but what came up wasn't anger for her mother, it was grief. So the client follows a natural process. Attachment is a natural developmental theory, and our clients have taught us where to go. So you follow your client couples taught us how to do EFT with couples, right? Your individual clients will go to these places. So it's different, but it's not. If you can do EFT with couples, you can do EFT with individuals, standing on your head, playing a tambourine. Okay.
Thank you so much for that.
Gee, Sue, we're going to have to wrap up, and we have a closing, and I'll invite everyone to say their thank yous and goodbyes. But first, it's an incredible hour we've spent together, Sue, with everyone. And I really appreciate your modeling vulnerability and strength in ways we all, I think, can benefit by. I look forward to you and Leanne presenting your EFIT program in a couple of months. We'll send everyone out that information. So Sue, how we're going to end is we're going to give you the second to last word, and then we open up all our microphones and people can say their thank yous and goodbyes. It's kind of a cacophony, but I invite everyone to do that, because we're all in this. What we've noticed that the Zoom screen does bring us together in ways that are quite wonderful and unexpected. So Sue, second to last word to you, and then to everyone else.
Oh, thank you for being here with me, everybody. And we're all learning together. And so hopefully we can all just help each other do that. I appreciate you being with me.